Good morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR and welcome back to another video. I feel like normal type Pokemon always get a bad rap, or at least are way less appreciated than they should be. With a name like Normal and early game Pokemon like Rattata and Sentra populating much of your lineup, it's hard to get away from the stigma of being a low tier type. But what does the real truth around Normal look like? Let's start with a quick overview of some of the type's attributes. Offensively, Normal may not seem all that impressive, as it deals super effective damage against 0 types, making it the only type with this distinction. However, it's also only resisted by Rock and Steel type Pokemon, and Ghosts are immune to it, which means Normal can confidently hit 15 out of the 18 types for pretty good damage. This means more than 80% of all Pokemon have no resistance to Normal. In fact, part of the reason why the Steel type was introduced in Gen 2 was to combat against Normal's incredible offensive presence in Gen 1. Granted, Gen 1 Normal types had access to a particular tool that was really good, but we'll talk about that later. Normal perhaps shines the brightest in the defensive department though, where although it doesn't resist any types, it's only weak to fighting. And on top of that, it also has an immunity to Ghost-type attacks. This means that so long as a Normal type has really good defensive stats, it will more than likely make for an amazing tank. See Snorlax and Blissey, for example. Well, except Blissey kind of fell off this gen since Recovery got nerfed, and Snorlax isn't currently in the game, so maybe those weren't the best examples. Normal's immunity to Ghost also means it pairs exceptionally well with Psychic and Ghost-type Pokemon. So think about Hisuian, Zoroark, Indeedee, and Farigiraf. Yeah, I know it's probably supposed to be pronounced Farigiraf, but I just think this sounds way more fun. As they essentially trade a weakness to Ghost for an immunity. Normal is also not a bad secondary typing for Bug, Fairy, Flying, and Poison, as they would only take neutral damage from fighting but gain an extra immunity. With the basics out of the way, let's jump into our history section. As alluded to earlier, Normal was one of the best types of all in Gen 1, thanks to the infamously broken move Hyper Beam, which bypassed the recharge effect if you KO'd an opponent. Which isn't all that hard of a task for a Normal type in Gen 1, seeing as how Gengar is the only viable Ghost type, and there were very few good Rock types who could tank such a powerful move. This move single-handedly made Normal the second best type of Gen 1. Of course, only coming in behind Gen 1 Psychic, who needs no introduction. Normal types also had this weird bonus effect only in Gen 1 where they couldn't be paralyzed by Body Slam, which may not sound like much of a benefit, but seeing as how this was the best reliable Normal type move in Gen 1 aside from Hyper Beam, it was actually pretty handy. When it came to the meta, Chansey, Snorlax, and Tauros were 3 of the most dominant Pokemon around. Tauros had incredible stats for a Gen 1 Pokemon, and since all normal moves were physical, it could easily abuse Hyper Beam. Chansey was an attacker disguised as a tank, as its incredibly high special stat of 105 allowed it to take advantage of its wide move pool, which included great coverage options like Ice Beam and Thunderbolt. But of course you could always just run Reflect and Soft Boiled to make people absolutely mauled. And then you had Snorlax, who was a bit of a mix of the two. Incredible bulk with its base 160 HP, but more than enough attack to also take advantage of Hyper Beam, Body Slam, and Earthquake. And hey, while we're talking about Snorlax, why not talk about specifically Gen 2 Snorlax? Yeah, in case you didn't sound busted enough in Gen 1, Snorlax actually received a massive buff in Gen 2, with its special defense increasing from 65 to 110. The introduction of held items in this gen, specifically leftovers, as well as Gen 2 in general being a highly rest-oriented meta, made Snorlax one of the most dominant Pokemon of all time. After all, nobody is better at sponging hits and sleeping it off than Snorlax. Chansey also got better, as it literally just evolved into Blissey. Who asked for this? As for Tauros, although it suffered due to the nerf to Hyper Beam, Miltank was introduced as the yin to Tauros' yang, as it was one of the few Pokemon who could stall in Gen 2 without putting itself to sleep, as it had the incredibly valuable move Milk Drink. Can cows actually drink their own milk? I have a lot of questions now. But to simplify it, although Gen 2 did its best to nerf Normal from an offensive perspective, they were never better when it came to defensive play. And Gen 3 was more of the same, Snorlax and Blissey with the side of Miltank. Bear in mind, at this point in time, fighting kinda sucked, as the only powerful stab moves they had were the somewhat unreliable Cross Chop, which could only be taught to Primeape, Machamp, and Hariyama, High Jump Kick, which could only be taught to Hitmonlee and Medicham, and it was only 85 base power back then, and Sky Uppercut, which belonged to Blaziken and Breloom, but even that move wasn't amazing. It really wasn't until Gen 4 where we'd finally see a viable answer for Normal-type walls, Close Combat. Finally, there was a move that was available on virtually every good fighting type, plus a few randos like Staraptor and Zangoose. Wait, guys, no! You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them! Well, I guess they could use it to fight against rock and steel types too, so it actually is kind of a win for the normal types. And as such, you sorta saw a shift back towards the offensive-based normal types here, namely Porygon Z and Staraptor. And oh hey, this is normally the part where I ask you to subscribe, but since we just reached 200,000 subs, I'm feeling generous and I'm gonna give everyone a coupon that lets you skip the part where I ask you to sub. And I'll be taking that back now, thank you very much. Unfortunately for normal, fighting types would continue to rise in popularity in Gen 5. Not only through the introduction of threatening Pokemon like Conkeldurr and Mienshao, but also drastically buffing some other great fighting type moves, Drain Punch and High Jump Kick. This was the gen that finally saw the stall tyrant himself Snorlax fall from the top tier. Blissey was basically the only one repping at the top now. Funnily enough, in Gen 6, Chansey would surpass Blissey in usage thanks to the growing popularity of the Eviolite item. Porygon 2 would follow suit as another viable normal type wall, and on the offensive side, Mega Lopunny and Diggersby would emerge as very scary contenders. Yeah, you heard me right. 2 rabbit Pokemon that at a glance looked like they couldn't get you past the second gym are actually 2 of this gen's most rabid killers. I guess that's what happens when you slap a busted Mega or Huge Power on something. Gen 6 also introduced what is probably the single best normal type attack since Gen 1 Hyper Beam, Boom Burst. You can run this move on anything from Exploud down to Chatot and it will do way too much damage. The only reason this hasn't made normal a completely broken type again is that it's still scarce. Even in Gen 9, there's only a grand total of 5 fully evolved normal types that can actually learn this attack. And most of them aren't particularly great, though this at least gives them a fighting chance. Anyway, Gen 7 is drier than the Sahara Desert when it comes to new content for normal types, so for all intents and purposes, just treat this as Gen 6 Part 2. Also, Z-moves didn't help either, because who the heck would actually use Breakneck Blitz? And as for Gen 8, all that I can really say applies to the VGC aspect of competitive, where Max Strike, the normal type Dynamax move, was actually a considerably popular choice among players, since it decreased the speed of both your opponent's Pokemon. This was basically the boneless version of Max Airstream, but since normal is the most common move type among all Pokemon, this was way more accessible. Anyhow, that's about all Gen 8 boils down to, at least in the Galar region. A single max move and nothing more. Though Legends Arceus would bless us with his Hisuian Zoroark, the first ever normal ghost-type Pokemon alongside its pre-evolution. In Gen 9 so far, this thing has only been available for a handful of weeks and it's already wreaking absolute havoc in the meta. With immunities to 3 different types compounded with the illusion ability, seeing this thing in your opponent's team is scarier than you accidentally autoplaying one of my videos at max volume at 3 AM while your family is trying to sleep. I know at least one of you have done it. Despite being a Gen 8 Pokemon, this thing has definitely solidified itself as Gen 9's definitive normal type. And that was already a pretty high bar thanks to Maushold being way more ridiculous than it has any right to be. But of course, when discussing Gen 9, you can't merely discuss the Pokemon themselves. We also have to discuss the gimmick, Terrestrialization. One of Terra Normal's main uses is to reverse any ghost type's weakness for an immunity, but it also pairs exceptionally well with a few other Pokemon. The first is Toxtricity, who can fire off a Terra Normal Boom Burst, which when its ability Punk Rock is added on top, that's basically a 270 power nuke going off. And of course, one that's extremely popular in both singles and doubles is Terra Normal Dragonite, who can fire off a ridiculously powerful extreme speed attack that not many Pokemon are able to tank. The main drawback of Terra Normal is Normal's lack of resistances, since Terrestrialization, especially in VGC, is used as a defensive tool more often than not. Because of this, Terra Normal does notably lack some of the versatility that other types have, since it has 0 resistances. Even most ghost types are probably better off terrestrializing into a dark type instead. And this is kind of the theme of normal types as a whole. They're remarkably balanced, and while not too showy because of their lack of strengths or weaknesses against other types, it can also make them somewhat reliable. Thankfully, most normal types have really good move pools to make up for the fact that they don't win against any types offensively, and defensively, while resisting 0 types, a lot of the times they can get away with just being great tanks since they're only weak to fighting. Especially in the first 3 gens where fighting wasn't all that great. I think the reason why normal isn't perceived as a high value type has more to do with the Pokemon it includes than the type itself. Most normal types are, as mentioned earlier, very weak early game Pokemon, or sometimes just completely random stuff like Stantler or Spinda or Castform who just aren't that great. But it does feel like after a few lame duck generations, normal may finally be on an upswing as Game Freak experiments with new ways to make them more offensively threatening. Is normal the best type in the world? No, certainly not. At least, not anymore. But is it the worst, as so many boldly claim? Absolutely not. Don't mistake lack of flair for lack of viability, because sometimes normal can be anything but normal. And with that, thanks for watching today's video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe for more videos like this one, and hey, maybe check out some more of the type history videos if you want to keep learning. I'll see you guys next time.